Welcome, Blockhouse Bay Baptist Church, to this 14th of November, 2021, to our online gathering. Just a couple of notices for you. One is that if you're listening to this, hoping to go to a hub, grateful that you've jumped on board to try to connect with other people. I do look forward to hearing how that feels to be reconnected. If you still have, for good reasons, are unable to do that or unwilling, just feel like it's too early, too quick, we're grateful that you've joined us to celebrate what God is up to. A couple notices. One is that on the 24th of November, the Advent service, we'll join together with the Bay Area churches to celebrate the coming of Jesus. That'll be at 7:30 on Zoom. And also we'll do our AGM on the 30th of November on Zoom at 7:30. Just watch the news and the online stuff as we will give you more information about how that will work as we discuss the 2022 budget as well as elders. Every good story has a good ending. The author wraps it up and tries to let people live either happily ever after, or they take the time to reveal all the plot twists and then to resolve those so that we can walk away feeling satisfied that we've understood all the twists and turns and the strange and crazy happenings in the story. Or an author will summarize all the different points and pieces that they've kind of covered and invite us to ask, what are we supposed to do now? What do we do with that? Well, Genesis is no different. It is a great story full of amazing bits and pieces of themes and interactions and real life. We start right at the beginning where God creates the world and brings order out of chaos and invites people to inhabit it and asks them to, invites them to, and calls them to care for the created world, to be fruitful and multiply, and to create culture. And we are gifted to do that. Yet we rebel. We see murder happen. We see chaos. And we see people live for themselves. And so the world is in trouble. But again, we see God step in. He's never really been absent, but step in to engage the world as it is in a broken way. And says, my plans still remain. I look forward to bringing my plans to bear on this place and on these people. And so we get to see that journey of how God interacts through the book of Genesis, where he covenants with his people to say, I'm going to bless you and keep you, and I'm going to watch out for you, and I'm going to make you fruitful and multiply so that you can be a blessing to others. And so that's the story that we see. Well, how does Genesis wrap itself up? How does the author bring things to completion? And one, I'd like to say, the author basically says everybody is living happily ever after. And let me resolve a few twists and turns and give you some resolution. And what are you going to do with this story that you've read and learned from? What's your next step? Happily ever after. Well, if you've been following along, you realize from Genesis 37 till 50, when we hit 47 or 46, the people of Israel are now all in Egypt. They are under the care of Joseph. They are provided for. They have land. They have their animals with them, and the people are all there together. They are, in fact, fruitful and multiplying. God has brought his people together in one place and has blessed them. They are living happily ever after. Not only that, but the people of Egypt are alive, right? So you could say that the blessing has been for bigger than just the people of Israel. Well, second, we get some resolution of plot twists, right? Joseph and his brothers and his father have been at odds. There's been this tension, this mess. And what we see, though, is at the very end, when you could guess that all things could have gone really wrong, Jacob blesses all of his sons, brings Joseph's family into that blessing, elevates Joseph as he is already elevated to the one who's in charge of the family for this season, but also promises that God's going to keep working in the family and bring Judah to the next level of leadership. But on a more specific level, when Jacob dies, Jacob's brothers, or Jacob's sons and Joseph's brothers, fear that all of a sudden Joseph is going to bring havoc on them. But Joseph says, look, guys, in Genesis 15, 19, and 20, am I in the place of God? Look, what you intended for my harm, God intended for good. Not only for me, but also to provide for this people, which he's doing, and so I'll watch out for you and care for you. So Joseph, who at the beginning was an arrogant brat, created this consequence, partly by his own action, but his brothers as well, this mess, this brokenness that we can see all the way through Genesis, had its consequences rolled out, but yet here we see a resolution where the brothers are together. They are at peace, and there's a recognition that God has been at work to bring about this resolution. So the family is together. They are fruitful. They are being multiplied. They are blessed. They are a people, like God said they would be, growing. But I also think that Genesis lands and ends with a question. Now you could say, where's that question? But I want to just highlight the fact that in Genesis 50, 19, and 20, we get this statement from Joseph saying, am I in the place of God? No. What you intended for evil, God intended for good. And then Joseph says, look, I'm going to die, and I know that God is going to come again. He's going to come and bring you out of this place and bring you into the promised land. So take me with you. Promise me you'll take me with. Genesis ends on that note and puts these two statements together. I think the author intends us to reflect on Joseph. Joseph is someone who's come to understand who God is deeply through his experience and through God's presence with him. Joseph has experienced in his own life hardship, betrayal, injustice, being forgotten, and God's presence in and through all of those things. And at the same time, he's experienced God's presence with him as he's been elevated, right, to the second in command in Egypt, and also elevated over his brothers and even his father, where Joseph now has seen God at work to bless him. And in that recognizes that God has been faithful not only to him, but to his father Jacob, and to Isaac, his grandfather, and to Abraham, his great-great-grandfather. But he recognizes that God has been faithful to do what he has promised long ago, is to bless this people, make them fruitful, provide them a place, and to bless the nations through them. So Joseph has learned that God is true to his word, and that no matter the amount of evil, God's plans will end up working out. And so he is free, right, to act this way to his brothers, because he realizes, you know what, I am just somebody who's a part of what God is doing. I am not God myself, and so I need to live like God intends me to live, seeking the good of my brothers, seeking the good of the nation I live in. God has a particular way he wants us to live. I've seen him be faithful in the evil, but I've seen him be faithful in the good, and realizing that to live good is the better. And so we recognize that, but further we recognize that faithfulness that he recognizes, that Joseph recognizes of God, leads Joseph to have hope. Where he says to his brother, take my bones with you when God brings you out of here to the promised land. Joseph is not only living in the past or the present, but living in the future. He has hope that God's not done with what he's doing. Well, what do we learn from that? What are we supposed to do with that? I think for us, we must recognize that Joseph is an invitation to reflect on the question, what do we think of God? Do we believe that he's faithful like he says he is? Do we believe that he's revealing himself over and over again to work good through evil, to work good in our own lives when we don't do what he wants us to do, to bring about his presence on this world and his goodness in such a way that we can trust that that's true in the life around us, in the church that we are part of, and in our own individual lives? And two, are then we able to step out in hope? Step out in hope that when we live as God intends us to, we can have confidence that that will participate, that life that we live, the things that we do, the things we get involved in, all those things will matter to God's kingdom come. You see, we have way more than Joseph knew. We not only get to see Genesis, but we see all the rest of the Old Testament where God is faithful to work through the people of Israel, through the prophets, through the kings, through the judges. And we get to see his longing for the nations to know him and for the world to be right with one another and with him. And we see Jesus as the ultimate view of what Israel was meant to do, to live in obedience, loving obedience to God, but also in blessing to the nations. Where Jesus then gives himself up as a sacrifice for us, right? Because we don't fulfill what God invites us to. He takes our place, but then turns around and gives us his Spirit to live the way he wants us to. Gives us power, and he gives us insight and wisdom. He gives us strength. He gives us hope that whatever we do in Christ will last. That his kingdom come is coming through our love and care and hospitality and generosity and kindness and patience and gentleness and self-control. All these things that we get ourselves involved in. So when you go to work, when you're with your family, when you're part of the community, when you go to the construction site and actually live the way that God asks you to live, when we work at these things, we then see that God is indeed at work in the world and in our own lives. And we can have hope that God is going to take what we do and keep filtering it into the kingdom come that he is working and will bring to completion. So our hope can be, I can live boldly for Jesus. I can live humbly. I can live with full of generosity. I can live with hospitable lives. I can live sharing Jesus with others. I can live a life of character where I don't have to worry so much about how much I have, because God's promising that as we trust him and live his ways, he will be faithful to us. And he will work out all these details in our lives, even if it's good around us or bad, that his ways will come to fullness. And so Jesus asks us, do you believe me? Do you believe that I'm faithful? Do you believe my ways are good? Will you live as Christ-like disciples, hoping that my ways are good in the world and that what you do will bring about what God is inviting us into? Genesis is a book with a great story throughout, but as it comes to an end, it invites us. Do you believe in the God of the Bible? Do you believe that he is faithful and good? Do you believe that he's called you to have a place in his kingdom come? And do you believe that he's asked you to live a particular way, wise and discerning in the ups and downs, so that you are confident the life that you live can be full of hope, and to know that what you do and what you're involved in, God is at work in? May we all learn that God is good and faithful, and our lives in his kingdom come are so valuable. Peace.